The Israeli military is waiting at the Gaza border. Massive columns of tanks, self-propelled guns, and thousands of soldiers are ready. All they are waiting for is the go-ahead for the Gaza ground offensive. But the clock is ticking, and the world is witnessing a humanitarian crisis unfold in Gaza, with thousands dead already. Against this backdrop, what does Israel really want to achieve in Gaza? Most importantly, what can Israel claim as its military victory in Gaza? Since October 7th, when Hamas terrorists infiltrated into Israel and butchered hundreds of civilians, the Gaza offensive has been written on the wall. But it is almost 3 weeks, and the world is now flooded with distressing images from Gaza. Military experts say that the world opinion is slowly turning from blindly supporting Israeli actions in Gaza towards cautioning and even warning Israel against mounting deaths of Gaza civilians. In such a scenario, every day of delay in the launch of this ground offensive is making the task difficult for Israel. Also, it should be kept in mind, Hamas has over 200 hostages in its captivity in the Gaza Strip. What is a foregone conclusion is that Israel will look to decimate Hamas. But is that really possible militarily? And if Israel really manages to do that, what would follow that? Who will control the Gaza Strip? But let's begin by answering the first question first. What are the military options for Israel right now? Well, there are 3 military options according to experts for Israel, and it is already going ahead with one. Experts say its options are, first, to launch the ground offensive into North Gaza, irrespective of the status of the hostages. However, politically, this could be ruinous. For Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, retired Lieutenant General Syed Hasnain told IndiaToday.in that there is already a lot of pressure on the Benjamin Netanyahu government for the safe returns of the over 200 hostages. In fact, that is also one of the reasons that Israel hasn't launched a full ground offensive in Gaza yet. The second military option for Israel, according to Lieutenant General Hasnain, is to launch surgical strikes against the leadership of Hamas with the special forces, an attempt to rescue the hostages. He says that chances of success are only marginal. If successful, Israel could then launch an offensive into Gaza. Now, the third option would involve targeting of Hamas assets through precision bombing and won't need a full-scale ground offensive. General Hasnain says, carry out selective bombing of missiles or rocket sites, command centers and military logistic bases in Gaza, while sealing the seafront and negotiating the release of hostages. No ground offensive if negotiations succeed. This is what General Hasnain says. The Indian Army veteran says in all options, Israel would be prepared to respond to any offensive actions of Hezbollah or the Iran-Syrian combined in the north. Israel is already going ahead with the third option. On Thursday, the Times of Israel reported that Israel Defense Forces, or the IDF, carried out an overnight targeted raid in the northern part of the Gaza Strip with infantry forces and tanks. The IDF says its troops struck numerous terrorists, infrastructure and anti-tank guided missile launch positions. But a ground offensive is inevitable. Netanyahu said on Wednesday, we are preparing for a ground invasion. He said, I will not elaborate on when, how or how many. I will also not elaborate on the various calculations we are making, which the public is mostly unaware of. And that is how things should be. But the question is, can Israel finish off Hamas? Israel has fought several full-scale wars since its foundation in 1948 and has won all of them. But the offensives into Gaza haven't always produced the desired results. Also, its idea of finishing off Hamas might not materialize as the organization is woven into the fabric of Gaza's life. Hamas started controlling Gaza, the smaller of the 2 Palestinian territories, after winning the 2006 elections. A door-to-door fight in Gaza Strip is fraught with high risks. Hamas's military infrastructure is embedded in residential areas, and its 30,000 to 40,000 terrorists hide among the civilians. Hamas terrorists will be able to deal a heavy blow even to a much superior and sophisticated Israeli military. Its guerrilla tactics, anti-tank missiles, and the serpentine network of underground tunnels, also known as the Gaza Metro, would most likely come into play. Experts believe during the last major offensive by the Israeli Defense Forces in Gaza in 2014, around 66 Israeli soldiers, 6 Israeli civilians, and well over 2,000 Palestinians died. There have already been many casualties this time. So it is difficult to foresee an Israeli attempt to try and physically control Gaza to weed out Hamas completely. Military experts say it isn't possible to finish off an ideological movement easily. Israel has tried it in the past and failed. They also say that Israel has already lost a lot of time. The delay in the ground offensive is also giving time to Hamas and its benefactors to prepare better for the eventual attack. The IDF knows from its past experience that a ground offensive into Gaza will be heavily contested and will be a brutal battle. The 200+ hostages add to this concern. Despite the distressing images from Gaza and the civilian casualties the Israeli assault is causing, Israel will expand its Gaza operations because the Netanyahu government has to show something to Israelis about the biggest carnage against Jews in a post-Holocaust world. Also, Israel will want to be seen as strong and taken seriously in any peace negotiations in the future. But the question is, what Israel will look to achieve in Gaza? Israel has a reputation for military efficiency and would well achieve its objectives very quickly if an offensive into Gaza is launched. But Lieutenant General Atta Hasnain says the rescue of hostages appears very unlikely. In the event of confirmation of death of hostages, a fuller offensive with little remorse for civilian casualties will be launched. A hard-slogging match could result in heavy casualties on both sides. Hamas is in suicide mode and could accept this, but the Israeli leadership is going to find it difficult to justify its continuation. He warns an uneasy, no war, no peace situation could prevail for long. So what would Israel hope to achieve with the Gaza offensive? What Israel can best hope for is a short and swift offensive into Gaza which ends in a military victory followed by a quick ceasefire and pullback of troops. Eliminating key Hamas leadership and the majority of its war-waging capabilities should be a key outcome. Release of all hostages, at least the non-military ones, has to be part of the success of operations. Securing the release of hostages, dismantling of the Hamas war machinery, eliminating its leadership, and destroying its capability to launch attacks into Israel will be considered a success of the Gaza operations. This is what the experts say. What happens to Gaza, who governs it, will be an outcome which will have to be settled much later through negotiations and in close coordination with regional players. The biggest problem, if Israel manages to remove Hamas's control of Gaza, is that it could create a vacuum and allow Hamas or some other terror outfit to take roots. American political scientist focused on global political risk, Ian Bremmer says, this would mean that once started, an invasion would lead to an indefinite occupation of an unwinnable counterinsurgency. The only way Israelis can achieve lasting security is by offering Palestinians a credible pathway to realize their legitimate aspirations for self-determination by peaceful means. But he also has a warning. He says it's going to get much worse before it gets better. And that is what we as the world will have to witness. Do tell us what you think about this video in the comment section, and for more news updates, subscribe to India Today.